Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome, and thank you for joining us on our webinar on is your print infrastructure relevant, and I guess printing from anywhere to anything. Today, we are going to cover a little bit about Microsoft Universal Print and talk to you a little bit about what that is, and I guess why it's become important to all of us, given the way and the nature of I guess a nomadic workforce these days, working from multiple sites and easily accessing printers and how that's managed and the security around it. Also, we want to talk to you a little bit about, I guess, print management in the cloud. So managing your print infrastructure, obviously, people's technologies move towards the cloud. Print infrastructure in particular, I'm talking about the print server or the software that supports printing on a site and the management of that. Why hasn't that moved to the cloud? We're going to discuss that today as well. So let me introduce our subject matter expert, John Harding. John Harding's the practice lead for National Print Management and Professional Services team at Konica Minolta, Australia. He's had 20 years experience in the IT industry, focusing on design and implementing software solutions, and has worked with a number of market-leading vendors across the country and the globe. So welcome, John. Firstly, let me just do a couple of housekeeping points. We're going to record the session, so if you have to leave partway through and you don't get to see it all, we'll send that recording out. Please, if you've got questions, plug them into the Q&A window and we will get to those at the end of the presentation. John, once again, thanks for joining us. Thank you very much for your time. I'm going to hand over to you and come back to you with some questions at the end of your presentation.
Thank you, Matt, and thank you everyone for joining me today. So I'm just going to start sharing my screen and we'll get down to a bit of a discussion around rethinking your print infrastructure. So getting into it straight away, as Matt talked about, we're going to have a few topics to cover off today. I'm going to lead into it with regards to current technology that Microsoft is bringing to market in terms of Universal Print by Microsoft. Talk to you about some of the advances and the benefits of looking at this as a platform to both allow users to be able to print, and then some of the challenges. And then overlay that kind of conversation with regards to what does that mean for your current print infrastructure? What does it mean with regards to using print management or Follow Me Print or Secure Print software to better understand and report on your customers or end users printing and scan recommendations and methodologies. And then kind of finally talk to you about what's coming, what we're seeing in the market, and certainly with regards to cloud compute and infrastructure, so many changes are happening, and this is something that certainly is impacting with regards to print. So on the screen, it's just got a little bit of a blurb and discussion point around what Universal Print is and where it's positioned by Microsoft. It's an extension of the Microsoft 365 platform running in Azure. There's a little bit of a technical diagram on the right-hand side, but basically all that's talking to is that users are now on a Windows platform being able to access a cloud platform which ties into potentially your existing Microsoft ecosystem to provision print. And it's all about basically almost that one-stop shop where an IT administrator can provision those print queues, and the end user is getting that streamlined nature of being able to look and find those print queues for themselves to interact with printing in an as seamless way as possible. There are some things we're going to talk about also today with regards to the ability for existing or new print devices to actually be able to support it natively, and then some of the challenges around legacy and multi-vendor fleets and things like that with regards to Universal Print as well. But I guess the first thing that obviously want to come out of the box and say is that we're talking about thinking about what your print infrastructure looks like today. Obviously, Azure AD, Microsoft 365, Office 365 have changed the way that a lot of IT company or IT professionals have looked at the way you're provisioning servers. Traditionally, you may have had, for example, Active Directory servers or Exchange servers in each of your offices. You might have then gone to a centralized platform based on being able to have connectivity through WAN connectivity or different other connectivity between your sites. And then finally, you might have already looked to things like Office 365 or now Microsoft 365 with regards to your email and other functionalities in Active Directory. So Universal Print is that step to moving away from having a traditional print server, regardless if you've got a print management solution or not. This is about providing a platform that will allow people to move away from having potentially one of those last physical servers that you have in your on-premise environment. So I've broken up kind of a little bit of a 101 around Universal Print into a few different sections and verticals with regards to what it offers. The first one is about your print platform, and that's what I was just discussing around removing print servers and controlling the environment and visibility into your print environment. So traditionally, a lot of customers would have been standing up a print server to manage access and availability of print queues and printers for end users. Again, it was that kind of methodology that's been around for years now to get away from having to manage users point to point in terms of an endpoint laptop or PC to a printer. So centralizing that with a print server. Now there's a lot more platforms that have come into the market around this with regards to if they're cloud-centric print deployment or even print management. But this platform itself, Universal Print, is about bringing it into a scalable solution that doesn't require you to have to spin up any infrastructure. It's part of your Office 365 or Microsoft 365 license. And it's about obviously moving the responsibility of maintaining that server and connectivity to Microsoft, like you have if you're using something like Azure AD or the email for Microsoft 365 as well. The next step is kind of talking around user experience, because as much as it's great that you can provide streamline and an efficiency with regards to the back end and IT professionals being able to reduce their cost and their spend with regards to print servers, maintaining print servers, uptimes, all of those things, it's also about making sure that end users get a streamlined experience as well, because there's no use in delivering a piece of a solution if the end users are not going to be able to pick it up and use it. They will always find workarounds to get the least impact to themselves. So things that are built into the Universal Print platform is about finding print queues. Now, obviously, we would, from a solutions perspective, we would always recommend looking for utilizing something like a print management solution using Secure Print or Follow Me Print. But we know that there is challenges with regards to that. And certainly, as Matt said, a roaming workforce and potential sites that don't have a requirement for Follow Me Print, they only have one device. So by building in the ability to search for locations into finding print queues, that's already built into something like this platform for Universal Print. It also, because it's that ecosystem within inside Microsoft, you're leveraging the ability for people to access printers. You're accessing the way that people can get printers deployed to them, and you're also managing the way that that they are deployed. So things like the defaults that you may have in the past had some challenges about managing. These are things that Microsoft is heavily working on in being able to facilitate the economy of scale, but also the friendliness of your environmental impact with regards to what people are printing, how they're printing defaults, print policies, and those sort of things. The other important point on this slide really is about this is no longer having to be on a corporate network, much like Microsoft 365 allows you to be able to access your inbox for email or SharePoint for a document management repository anywhere using your Microsoft credentials in your obviously enterprise SSO or connectivity. This now takes it to that step for print. Okay, so it means that you don't have to be connected to a VPN. You don't need to be connected to your office network or Wi-Fi. You can submit a print job anywhere as long as you've got an internet connectivity. Now, maybe it's something that is worthwhile flagging now, and I'll touch on it a bit later, is that is both a pro and a con when you think about that. Now, Print jobs can be small, but they can also be large. So there's some challenges around where, if you want people to be sending print jobs over a, internet connectivity point, and whether or not that is going to be fit for purpose in terms of their experience being able to get that print job out when they need it. Obviously, with that point and sending print jobs across an internet connected channel comes the risk of security, right? So we're always talking about making sure that the jobs and the documents and everything like that are as secure as possible. So obviously with a platform such as Universal Print, where you're providing the ability to print from anywhere, you've got to make sure that everything is encapsulated at the highest level of security that is possible. So again, by default and as sort of out of the box, all the communications of this is over HTTPS, and it's all, again, governed and managed by Microsoft. So again, that's kind of the thing that we are looking for here, is that it's taking the burden of these challenges away from an IT team and making sure that they're managing those connectivity points and those risks and all those sort of things, and buying into that platform from Microsoft and them delivering the service. And then talking in print. As I say, a lot of customers have already gone on the journey with regards to document repositories and email and user access with regards to Active Directory. And this is the next step. It's about print. It also means that you're limiting or you're reducing the risk about print drivers. So the process about obviously centralizing and using Universal Print means that you can determine what that print profile looks like to users. So it has both the ability for security methodology because of it's part of the Microsoft ecosystem, and then also what I talked about on the previous slide, which is in regards to print policy and managing what the people are printing and how they're printing. But obviously, all of these things are about a pure print platform. It is not about providing something like a print from anywhere or a secure print or any of those functionality out of the box. Now, that being said, we are working with Microsoft as a vendor, as a partner, as a global gold partner, and we know that there is work being done in that space around things like pin release and other functionality that is coming into Universal Print. Because again, this is a platform. It's provided by the Microsoft 365 and Azure foundations. So it is going to be continually developed. So it's always going to have these things added to it, more functionality, greater reporting, greater granular access to different users and different functionality within inside the Microsoft platform. I've told you about all the great things. Oh, gone back too far. But there are some challenges. Okay, it is a new product. It's things that obviously Microsoft is keen to have people in their environment engage on, but it is a Microsoft product. So there is challenges with regards to connectivity. There is also challenges with regards to what it looks like today with regards to your existing device fleet and whether or not it can natively support Universal Print. Now, with the Konica Minolta latest range of devices are supporting Universal Print natively, but there is challenges with regards to other vendors and other older devices about being able to connect to Universal Print and be able to use that functionality for end users. With regards to that, I touched on it in the first diagram, there is a Universal Print connector, but that comes with it that you need infrastructure to basically run that on. So you've gone down the path of reducing your print infrastructure only to potentially have to implement something. Now, it might not be at the same scale or size, but it is something that needs to be taken into account. There is also obviously the challenges, as I talk about, with sending print jobs, all print jobs across your internet connection. Now, that could be for users, great in terms of if they're working from home and if they're nomadic, but they've also got to have a decent connection speed to be able to print those jobs. As I said, print jobs do vary in size in terms of what their payload looks like. And again, functionality. What does it look like for all users and how they engage with print? It's not a silver bullet across all platforms. It is, again, a Microsoft product, but it has great functionality and great way for us to re-envision what your print infrastructure would look like. So at that point, I suggest that this is where one of our, I guess, our strengths within Konica Minolta and our professional services team is understanding what is fit for purpose. So our engagement model is always looking at the new technology and then being able to scope, look at it, recommend, and then implement. Now, and that could be universal print. And we have engagements with customers where we look at universal print as being a perfect opportunity for them to reduce their current infrastructure. And especially, for example, if they have a lot of sites. If you've got a lot of sites, a lot of locations where you may have traditional infrastructure, but you have no requirement for a print management solution. This is certainly something that I would recommend that you start having a look at and understanding whether or not it's something that you could move away from your traditional onto something like a cloud platform with regards to this. Diving into a little bit of those challenges a little bit deeper. So with regards to the support for current devices, I touched on it a couple of times already. There is the ability to support legacy devices using the print connector. Now, it does require a server. Okay. Now, that server can be provisioned wherever the customer deems that it is required. It is, at the end of the day, basically fronting the print jobs from Universal Print into a traditional print server. Now, we know that a lot of customers in the past have also been able to migrate their print servers to the cloud with some level of success. A lot of them have been very successful. Some of them maybe not so much because, again, the bandwidth and the architecture. So again, this is one of those things to think about as we're going through this and kind of raising things with regards to things that you should be aware of with rethinking or engineering your infrastructure. This is something that you should take into account. Where is your fleet? Whether or not it's connectivity in terms of a native connector, whether or not it's future-proof. And then again, maybe there's an opportunity to rationalize as a starting point to go from where you are today in a dispersed or a decentralized platform to a centralized platform, leveraging Universal Print as a ingestion method. Just an ability for users to be able to get access to printers, deploy the printers, and be able to get them to be able to print from anywhere without having to leverage every other infrastructure. And this is probably the other one that we're seeing, and I'll touch on this with regards to other functionality and features that we're seeing with regards to print and going cloud and centralizing in general, I guess. So with regards to connection and speed, this is always a challenge. It always has been a challenge for customers with regards to multi-sites and where you stand up and you design your architecture with regards to a centralized print platform, regardless if it encouraged a piece of software that would be able to mitigate issues with regards to print policies and the like, or just being able to have a centralized print server. So with regards to this, obviously, the thing that I will have reiterated a few times is all the print jobs need to go up into the Azure cloud. Now, they're all secure. It gives you great visibility of all your print jobs, gives you the ability to understand what people are printing, when they're printing, all of those things, that you would be able to ascertain at a high level of reporting, and that will continue to develop with the Universal Print platform. But it does mean that all the jobs need to go up, and they all need to come back down as well. Now, it's all dependent on your WAN connectivity and your connection to the Microsoft 365 platform, and the connectivity that you need to push it down to a printer. So it's not only just the link that a person has to be able to print up, but it's also the link to get that back down to the printer as well, if it's a remote or regional site. The final point I'll make on is that there is timing of polling depending on the solution that we would be back-ending into Universal Print. So users who wanted to be able to leverage this and expect a print job to come out immediately, they might have an expectation that we would need to work through with regards to how's the print, what's the lag time for printing? Could it be 30 seconds for you when you hit print for the print job to come out? Potentially on the printer even next to you, because at the end of the day, if you migrate everyone to Universal Print and they've got a direct print queue that they want to print to a printer right next to them, the print job's going to go up and all the way back down. It's not going to go sideways directly into the printer. But I guess the final piece to say is that Universal Print is not an all or nothing platform. We have customers that are implementing it right now as a point of difference, just to provide access to certain print functionality and use cases inside their business. going to kind of go on a bit of a tangent and just talk about cloud print management and centralization of print solutions in general. And so you just talk around some of the things that are coming, some of the things that are here. And it's probably more of an education piece as much as anything, because there's a lot of terms and jargon out in the market. And as I said in the beginning of this is changing rapidly. We've got things like Microsoft in this space with regards to moving on from their traditional print servers to cloud platform. We have a lot of vendors that we work with globally that are moving away from providing on-prem solutions to cloud, multi-tenant cloud, managed service clouds, all sorts of different terminologies and different ways that they're implemented. Excuse me. So two main variants that we have seen come through the market is one that is around called pure cloud, which is exactly what you would expect it to be. It's essentially both the end user and the print device talking to a centralized multi-tenanted software as a service or platform as a service, depending on how it's delivered, to the end user. Now, in its pure cloud state, it is great if it will work for you in terms of how you would implement the solution, your connectivity. It reduces your footprint completely with regards to having to have IT infrastructure. It allows both the client and the device to be in zero trust networks. So again, if you had a mobile workforce or even a site that needed to be stood up very quickly, traditionally you would need to stand up both your end users and your print device into a corporate network. This would allow quite flexible to be able to users to basically walk in as long as the print device had internet connectivity and be able to print almost instantaneously. So with that obviously comes the challenges of connectivity, but all of the vendors that are working in this space obviously see that as the way forward, because it then takes all the reliance of having to build into an infrastructure platform that exists and makes it as light lifting as possible for the end users and the IT. Now, as a lot of cloud people and practitioners will talk to you about, pure cloud may not work for everyone because the link to the cloud may not always be there. And on top of that, it may not be something that you want to be throwing all your print jobs or all your scan jobs or whatever it might be in terms of your print management solution through a cloud link or an internet connection link. So that's where edge technology, which is, I guess, a common practice with regards to a hybrid cloud approach. And in this case, it's probably one of the better options with regards to a print platform. An edge device will basically mean that your print jobs and a lot of your metadata will stay inside your local area. It is a piece of usually a piece of hardware that would sit inside your environment. It can be virtualized. It can potentially be leveraging other existing compute, depending on the vendor. But again, it's something to understand that an edge device will allow that print traffic to stay local, potentially, with only the metadata and your management being put into the cloud in a potentially multi-tenant or a singular tenant environment. But again, the advantage with that is that you're keeping your print data local and you're only pushing the critical data that you need for reporting, understanding print policies, what people are printing, how they are printing, any of that data that you would generally move outside of your local network to be able to make big data decisions or large data decisions across an enterprise or a business, you're able to push up into a centralized reporting platform. So I wanted to basically just end on a few kind of conversation pieces around traditional print management or even print infrastructure versus what we would expect to see in modern print management and print infrastructure. Now, this is kind of taking away another step down from with regards to universal print, or even what we just had on the previous slide, which is around a cloud-hosted print management solution. This is about looking at what your infrastructure looks like today. Do you have n number of sites that actually have infrastructure on them? Are users printing via a shared print queue using a local print server, and then the print job is being released at the MFD once they go and actually have to badge on or authenticate at the device? Though this is scaled and it has been the traditional methodology prior to our print management solution, this is certainly the thing that I would be challenging most IT people to have a look at today and saying, Do you need that print infrastructure at site? What is the challenge that you have there? Is there an ability to look at the solutions that are in the market, be them cloud, be them on-prem, to reduce that infrastructure and look to refine those local infrastructure cases to be exceptions rather than the rule? Our experience is traditionally they were an infrastructure or an architectural decision that was made that every site required to have a print server. Now, we would probably challenge that with regards to our engagements with a lot of our IT customers with saying, can we make that an exception? Can we build a centralized platform, be it within inside a customer's data center, the private cloud, or a managed cloud from Konica Minolta or one of its vendors, and then have the exception be that they had some needed a site that had local infrastructure or a use case that required local infrastructure, that was scaled appropriately. So that's something that, again, a discussion point that I would like, obviously people to take away and have to think about that side of things. Is there a point where you could look at centralizing your infrastructure? You might not be on that journey quite yet to be able to move completely to the cloud. There might be use cases, there might be security challenges, there might be all sorts of other things that you have that make it challenging for you to move to that point yet. But it would always be challenging our customers and the people that we're working with around how can you centralize? Why do you need to have all of that infrastructure for print? It's traditionally even the conversation of why would you have a print queue for every single printer, right? It was the conversation that we always have with regards to print management. Where's the value there? It's not only a value add in terms of reducing your print and giving you access or user access to multiple printers. It's also about being able to reduce your overhead in IT admin, right? You don't want to have to be managing anything more on a server than you need to. Again, moving to this is talking about client spooling, and I touched on this with regards to the edge configuration. This is kind of something that I would be looking for customers to really have a hard think about whether or not they can implement something where there is localized spooling, but a centralized management platform. So whatever you have in terms of a solution, it would be a centralized platform, but you would be using localized spooling. That means that your print jobs are not having to cross a WAN. We talked about that. I know that was the universal print, one of the challenges there. But at this stage, we'd be saying, have a look at this, see if this is something that you could leverage, because again, it means that you can reduce your print infrastructure at your multiple sites if you've traditionally built those. It would also be looking at that scenario to say, well, is there other rationalization you can do in that space because of that ability to provide this functionality to end users? Client spooling has a lot of, I guess, advantages with regards to providing fail safes in terms of WAN outages or connectivity and core system functionality, while you don't have to worry about connectivity to the cloud or to an on-prem data center, for example. So finally, again, I touched on in the middle of the slide deck, why work with Konica Minolta? Now, I guess we're experts in this environment. We live it. The professional services team are delivering on this every day. We've built engagement and global relationships with our vendors. We promote vendor agnostic solutions. We look to work with the best of breed in terms of our solutions. And then we look to engage with those vendors as actual partners. So we look to have our support teams, our on the field techs trained so that they can be advocates and help your staff if we ever have to be called on site. We also make sure that they can train and that we can work with them in terms of our methodology. The final thing I would say is that obviously we talked about global partnerships. We have global partnership with Microsoft. We have global partnerships with a lot of our solution vendors as well. And that allows us to leverage that accessibility and our global reach with regards to Konica Minolta internally and externally with our partners. So Konica Minolta itself has working groups with regards to our engagement in the cloud. We have teams of cloud experts, infrastructure people, and solutions people looking at how are we leveraging cloud solutions across the planet and how they work in everyone's regions and the cultural challenges and also the infrastructure challenges. So being able to leverage that knowledge down to a local level gives us the ability to sense check what we're doing and then promote it internationally as well. So with that, thank you very much all for listening to me. Hopefully I haven't bored you to death and you've got something to take away.
Thanks so much, John. I have a few questions for you that have come through. So I might just start with some of the questions around universal print, if that's all right.
Sure.
Firstly, and I think you touched on it a little bit, and you did speak a little bit about more functionality to come with regards to universal print, pin release, etc. From a security perspective. But one of the questions is, is it possible to use some of the more advanced features of the printers using the Microsoft Universal Print platform? And the things I'm kind of thinking at the top of my head, color management, or maybe I've got a booklet making feature, or I want a double side, for instance, at a basic level. Does Universal Print support those types of features?
Yeah, so that's probably a really good question, and there's a couple of ways, unfortunately, to answer that. So cool. At the end of the day, the simple answer is yes, if you're going to use it in its pure form. And I guess this is probably one of the advantages with going with something that's a platform that Microsoft is developing. If you'd asked that, call it 12 months ago when this was in preview state, the answer would have been no. But as they continue to work with the vendors and their partners, they're opening up access to more functionality with inside the end printing devices. So as I say, today, you could potentially look at something and say, hey, is that supported? Maybe not, but within the next release, it would be. And some of those basic things and booklets and things like that, to my knowledge, that they are. There might be other functionality with inside a KM or another vendor that might not be currently. Now, the reason why I say there's a few questions and or a few ways to answer that, we have customers at the moment using Universal Print to basically front end a print management solution. Now, the challenge with regards to that is that you've got not only Microsoft and Konica Minolta in the mix with regards to vendors, but you also have the print management provider as well. Now, they basically use currently an application or a connector like the Universal Print connector. And that will have, some of them have some limitations about what functionality they can provide in terms of the print output through to their print management solutions. So I guess the takeaway is you should be able to, but we would like to scope it if there was a request that someone had a specific functionality they want to look at.
Yeah, I guess that's interesting. As you say, when it becomes a mixed fleet environment as well. Now, another question for you, and this may be kind of linked to another question that's in there as well. How does Universal Print allow for things like load balancing across a fleet? And the second follow-up question to that is, when would I use Microsoft Universal Print with print management? I think probably those combine into one, because one may answer the other. Interestingly, I kind of think of it this way. People are creatures of habit. They go into an office, they congregate in one area, they print to one printer all the time, and that might not be an effective way of printing. So how would we handle that with Microsoft Universal Print? And then when would I use Microsoft Universal Print with print management?
So I guess with regards to that, the whole idea of a native Microsoft Universal Print printer is that you're getting that feedback from the printer. If it's offline, it's much like if you were printing point to point, you'd find out it was offline. Okay. Once you overlay it with something like a print management solution, that becomes a challenge, because obviously it's essentially an ingestion point with regards to how the users are printing into a print management solution. I guess probably the comment would be made around if people print to the one printer and you're not using a print management solution, this is not going to impact that in terms of the way they print. It would probably be more about making sure that there was change management so they knew how to search for another printer. I guess it's the advantage with it, much like a print management solution, again, in itself, is it's really scalable. Okay, so the thing where it will find its niche straight away is those multi-site locations for customers that have lots of printers that maybe they're not necessarily managing all that well. This allows it to be a little bit more self-serve, and the IT team to have a little bit more, have a little less hands-on in terms of engaging with regards to having to maintain those things. It's all done through the Azure portal. You don't have to manage a number of print servers, all of those things. So your IT spend in that space is reduced.
Yeah, and so, in particular, I'm kind of thinking, Microsoft Universal Print with print management, I guess you're looking at things like where you want more advanced reporting, or you want to put rules-based printing in place where you're directing specific jobs to specific printers for a reason. Are those kind of points where you would apply print management and combine that with a universal print?
So I would always say that, if you've got more than 2 printers, there's probably a personal thing as well, there's probably some value with regards to print management. Okay, as you talked about, it's failover. I don't have to think about which printer I print to release my print job. And today, modern print management solutions are all about output management as well, right? So you're getting the ability to leverage the full capabilities of a multifunction device. So you're not only just using it to print, you're using it to leverage being able to scan into a workflow or an endpoint or multiple endpoints, or kick off something, right? It's a digital life cycle of the job. Again, you've got a device that potentially you're using. If it's a multifunction device, you want to get the full function out of it. So that's one of the things I'd say about where we leverage print management. Again, the other one about being able to print and not have to think about which printer I printed to is always nice. The advantage, I guess, with regards to why you'd use print management, so kind of flipping it on its head with and using universal print, it's the ability that you touched on right at the beginning, Matt. It's about nomadic, right? I don't have to think about, do I need to be on a corporate network? Do I need to think about this? I just want to submit my print job. End user just wants to be able to print. And from IT, I don't have to worry about how facilitating VPNs, all of those things. It's just like they would today with an email. They can get access to it anytime they want. The same thing with regards to this. You use universal print to ingest the job into your print management solution. And then it goes on like it would today, right? They can go and swipe and release at any device, but you don't have to worry about, do I need to architect connectivity into VPN or Citrix or whatever it might be? It just works, kind of thing.
Yeah, nice. That probably leads us into a couple more questions around the print, purely kind of around the print management. And one of those is, what security measures does print management have in place when shifted to the cloud?
So it's probably a vendor by vendor kind of conversation, but holistically, you're looking at those endpoints, right? So you're looking at what your endpoints in terms of servers. So you want to make sure that anything with regards to that, traditionally, if it's a Windows server, that its endpoints are all protected and hardened, and the solutions themselves that we provide. Obviously, we work closely with those vendors to make sure they're as secure as possible and continue to be as secure as possible with all the challenge that we have in terms of security models and hacks these days. The other thing is, we touched on it even with regards to what Microsoft has done with universal print. It's making sure your jobs are secure, right? So the jobs are secure in terms of the payload, in terms of when you're printing from a endpoint and then getting back down to the printer. Again, our recommendation from a partner perspective is, they're your challenges, they're your things that you want to make sure that your connectivity and your communication, even when you're moving to the cloud or even data center, they're all kind of touched on with regards to making sure that your throughput is as secure as possible. And as I say, that's not only printing up if you're an end user, but also retrieving that job if your job is being sent down from a cloud provider. But I guess the final piece of that, and it's kind of a little bit obtuse to that, is if you keep your print job local using client spooling, and again, that's kind of where we see print is probably nicely defined with an edge device potentially, is that you have a lower security and risk profile in that space because it's not leaving your network.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that, because I guess one of the questions was kind of around that edge device setup, and kind of, is metadata considered less sensitive than print data? And I guess in a lot of respects it probably is, because it's the mechanics behind how many pages and those sorts of things that are way less sensitive than potentially the document that's being printed, right?
Yes, but obviously you're still not discounting the fact that metadata can have a lot of information, right? Again,
Yep.
we work with federal government departments with regards to that, and certainly metadata is king with regards to, it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter if it's, the job payload, obviously highly sensitive, but the metadata can be almost as sensitive as that.
Yeah, okay.
Who printed what, when, from where, how to. Print management in that space, and it's probably a bit of a rabbit hole, is great for you to determine who's printing when and why, right? So you can leverage a lot of that information to understand why a person is printing, and you can have some really good conversations about life cycle of a document. But yeah, again, with regards to even pushing metadata, we'd always be recommending that it's as secure as possible.
Nice. And then kind of final question, and it's probably more, kind of just an industry-wide kind of discussion point is, aside from printing less, what is trending in print as a result of work from home, which I guess a lot of us are experiencing right now, and what should we be looking out for?
Well, I would say that it's the document lifecycle, right? It's do you need to print, right? I know we're traditionally a print company, but a document has a life cycle regardless. It's been developed for someone to consume or something to consume in a certain way. So I guess from our perspective, with regards to solutions business and professional services within Konica Minolta, is looking at that holistically. We've got customers that we've sat down with and understood, well, why are you printing that document only to hand it to someone so that it can be put into an automated workflow? So, why is there a gap there? So I guess probably work from home has pushed that on another step. There's a lot of, if you thought about 18 months ago, there was a lot of manual process that people were using. Doesn't matter if it's people signing into buildings, wet signatures, all sorts of compliance, HR kind of processes that were very manual. And they might have had an automated or a digital portion to them. But what we're seeing is actually our business is affected by that as much as anything. It's a growth for us to look at how you look at a document, how it's presented to you, how does it come into your business, and what does it do with it? What's the talk about what's the metadata? What do you need to be able to find it later? What does its endpoint look like? What's its requirements for you to keep that? Is there requirements for you to keep that as a record for X amount of years? And again, you don't want to build a content or a document management solution which just virtually becomes a storage box in a back shed. It might be digital, but no one actually can ever find the documents want. So I guess probably from our perspective, that's things that we're seeing trending in our space.
Yeah, one I've experienced just recently is I guess digital signatures, and really just who will and won't accept a digital signature, which kind of obviously presents issues when you're working from home and you're trying to gain multiple signatures on a document, and then collate that into one document and get that off to someone else, right? And if they don't accept the digital signature, then somebody has to print it out, sign it, scan it back in, get it to you. You hand it on to the next person, right? So that's an interesting one. And also just that mobile print trend, printing from any device to any device, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Thank you very much, John. That was the last of the questions. Really appreciate your time, and thanks for all the information. Good afternoon, everybody, and see you later. Thanks for your time. Bye.
Giving shape to ideas. Konica Minolta.